Please welcome to the stage the CEO of the Navy League of the United States and the 13th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, Mike Stevens, the Navy League United States National President, Christopher Townsend, and the 2025 recipient of the National President's Medal, Captain Marco Bagni. The Navy League of the United States National President's Medal is presented to foreign dignitaries who exemplify the highest ideals of the Navy League through their significant contributions to world peace, national security, and outstanding service to their country and fellow citizens. In tribute to one who has followed such a course of leadership, the Navy League of the United States is honored to present this award to Captain Marco Bagni, Naval Attaché to Canada and USA for the Italian Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. Captain Marco Bagni assumed duty as Naval Attaché in the Italian Embassy in Washington, D.C. on August 29, 2022. He has held a variety of assignments in the Italian Navy, including multiple commands at sea. Most notably, Captain Bagni commanded the FREMM class frigate, ITS Virginio Fasan, F-592, and deployed to the Mediterranean Sea to conduct a number of peacekeeping missions in the aftermath of the war in Libya. Captain Bagni has been a true friend of the Navy League and has helped the organization to deepen its ties with our valued ally, Italy. His assistance in building a collaborative partnership between Italy and the United States will continue to enhance the security of both nations for generations to come. Captain Marco Bagni's service reflects highly upon himself and is in keeping with the highest traditions of naval service of both of our nations and the Navy League of the United States. Presented this 7th day of April 2025, signed Christopher Townsend, 52nd National President of the Navy League. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to recognize today's session sponsor, Boeing, and the Hornet Industry Team. Please welcome to the stage Admiral Anthony Rossi, United States Navy, Director, Navy International Programs Office.
Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Friends, allies, partners, welcome. We gather here today to celebrate our relationships that form the cornerstone of our collective security and the rules-based order each of our countries rely on. We only need to look at our history to see how important those relationships are. The World Wars demonstrated the unconquerable power of an unshakable alliance founded in common goals and values. The Cold War demonstrated our collective ability to deter through resolve. Today, our global atmosphere is unsettled. War continues to rage in Europe. Storm clouds gather over the Pacific. Tensions and conflicts seem to alternate in the Middle East. I would argue that it is our efforts and the efforts of our partners and allies that prevent the continued spread of these conflicts through deterrence. When that deterrence is tested, our adversaries try their luck at aggression. We fight as a team, coordinate through precision, speed, and ferocity. My name's Tony Rossi. I'm the Director of Navy International Programs Office and the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Navy for International Programs, and also the person in the U.S. with the longest title. On the stage with me are leaders from some of our NATO allies, Denmark, the Netherlands, Germany, and Sweden. I'm fortunate that in my current role, I get to work with great partners and leaders. We share knowledge and capabilities and operate side by side. Sometimes these efforts are cooperative, sometimes they're transactional, but every discussion, every handshake, every transaction builds another layer of trust between us. It enhances our interoperability, or it fills an operational need. We're in the business of relationship building with our most critical friends and allies, because their strength is our strength, their security is our security. We're here to discuss best practices and ideas in our effort to become more interoperable in today's complex maritime environment. Our alliances and partnerships have no shortage of challenges. Some of these challenges include geopolitical tensions in Europe, the Middle East, and Indo-Pacific. We see unsupportable territorial claims and maritime claims, gray zone coercion, and naked aggression. In the area of cybersecurity and communication networks, we've seen state-sponsored cyber attacks and attacks on maritime communication systems that we all rely on in Europe and Indo-Pacific. We see regional maritime disputes, not just limited to the South China Sea. We see no shortage of challenges from denial of navigation to planting flags on undersea ridges to the race to secure the Arctic. Piracy continues to be an issue all around the world and continues to pop up in any ungoverned or unpatrolled space in the globe. We have the promise of advanced new naval weaponry that's coming. Cyber, AI, hypersonics, which can proliferate both to help us, but also to be a challenge for us if proliferated by our adversaries. This panel will be formatted a little different than prior years. We're going to dive right into the questions and answers. Given the experience we have on the stage, I'm looking forward to the panel discussion. You can find the panelists' bios in the Navy League app, so I'm not going to review them here for you. You can read them on your own. But I am honored to have with us on the stage Admiral of the Danish Fleet, Danish Defense, Admiral Søren Kelsen. Admiral Kelsen is a leader who has shaped Denmark's naval strategy over 3 decades. As Admiral of the Danish Fleet, he plays a central role in guiding Denmark's naval defense policy, strengthening its technological capabilities and ensuring the readiness of its forces. He has been instrumental in deepening Denmark's participation in NATO and European defense initiatives, advocating for closer defense cooperation with regional allies. Please help me welcome our first panelist, Admiral Kelsen from the Danish Navy. Our second panelist is Admiral Harold Lee Briggs. We're honored for this to be his second year joining us on the panel, so he's the veteran up here. Admiral Lee Briggs has dedicated his career to enhancing the operational effectiveness of the Royal Netherlands Navy. Currently serving as the Deputy Commander, he oversees critical aspects of the operational readiness and strategic defense policy. He has led several multinational operations and played a key role in fostering closer ties between the Netherlands Navy and NATO, especially in the area of maritime security, cyber defense, and combating maritime piracy. Under his leadership, the Netherlands Navy has advanced its integration of new technologies, strengthening its role in global maritime security, and ensuring interoperability with allied forces. Please join me in welcoming Admiral Lee Briggs. All right, next it's my pleasure to introduce Rear Admiral Dirk Gertner from Germany. In addition to his remarkable naval career, Admiral Gertner has made significant contributions to NATO, currently serving as the Director of Plans and Policy for the German Navy, where he leads efforts in strategic planning and policy development for one of Europe's largest and most capable naval forces. With decades of experience in military operations and policy formulation, Admiral Gertner has been in the forefront of German Navy's modernization initiatives, ensuring its forces are prepared for evolving threats from traditional naval conflicts to cybersecurity and hybrid warfare. He has played a pivotal role in enhancing German participation in European Union and NATO operations, including joint defense research and policy coordination. Let's give a warm welcome for Rear Admiral Gertner. All right, last but certainly not least, our final panelist, the leading authority on naval systems and defense technology, as the Director of Naval Systems Division at the Swedish Defense Materiel Administration, or FMV, Admiral Frederick Linden, oversees the development and acquisition of cutting-edge naval technologies, ensuring Sweden's naval forces remain at the forefront of modern defense capabilities. His work involves close collaboration with both national and international partners, focusing on the integration of advanced naval systems, autonomous technologies, and cybersecurity. Under his leadership, FMV has enhanced Sweden's naval defense posture through innovation and by integrating systems that promote interoperability with NATO allies. Please help me welcome Rear Admiral Linden. All right, now somebody else gets to talk besides me. So gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the panel. I'll start out with a few questions that I'd like each of you to take a turn at touching on, and then we'll go from there. So the first question, how have ongoing regional security challenges impacted your collaboration and innovation with global partners? How does it change your planning, and what unique strengths does your country and service bring? Admiral Kelson?
Yep. I'd like to start. To us, one of the biggest threats right now is the threat to critical underwater infrastructure. And that threat has made us do our defense planning all over again, because it's a new type of threat, and we haven't really handled it in the way that we're doing now. And that has made it necessary for us to cooperate with offshore industry, with commercial partners, but also with neighboring countries in the Baltic. It has also made it necessary for us to act closer with different governmental agencies in Denmark, and you can say it's a whole new way of doing defense planning. So that has really changed the way that we are doing defense planning, and it has changed the way that we are doing cooperation with the civilian industry as well. We have done a lot of cooperation with NATO as well. We have had NATO activities in the Baltic that we haven't seen in there before due to the threat against critical infrastructure. And we have had to step up and develop a very, very close cooperation with the NATO, with Marcom in the UK regarding this threat. So I think the threat to critical underwater infrastructure is one of the key threats lately that have really reshaped the way we're doing our defense planning.
Thank you, sir. Admiral Liebrigts?
Your question has a lot of sides to it. If you look at the Netherlands has been a trading nation for centuries. A large part of our wealth or prosperity comes from trading routes to the US or to the Indo-Pac region. So we have been operating worldwide, and we will continue to do so. And to do so, you need a certain level of strategic autonomy. And by that, I don't mean that we have to do everything alone, but I do mean that we have to be able to operate, maintain, and modify weapon systems throughout the lifespan. And to do this, you have to work closely with industry and research institutes, academia, in a system what we call triple helix, to develop systems, because you can't go to the market and expect the radar to be just there when you need it. You have to develop, research, develop and put versions of your radar system on each generation of new ships. And that's how we secure our strategic autonomy. But if you look at the present threat, that is in Europe, the main threat, of course, is a security threat, is the war in Ukraine after the invasion of Russia. And there's a risk of spreading, and I think Europe needs to step up in deterrence, and if deterrence fails, in fighting to win. Europe needs to be more self-supporting in both deterrence and in combat. And if you look at capacity and capacity building, I think we can learn from this conflict. We are a strong supporter of Ukraine, and for some reason we are able now to create projects and spend billions of dollars or euros on equipment if we decide today, and even spend it this year. And we haven't been able to do such a thing in recent history. Up to now, it took more or less 7 years before you even started a project. So I think it's very vital importance to get this system and make it ready for the time we're in now. We are preparing for conflict. And that also means that we need to adjust regulations, which are often EU regulations. And that is well underway, but we need to adapt and we need to adapt faster.
Thank you. Admiral Gertner.
I just can underline what my predecessor said. So if you look on Germany and the whole situation, so about 18 million households in Germany are directly linked to the Europipe 2 pipeline. So therefore, you can see what will happen if this critical underwater infrastructure is hit or damaged. So therefore, we are really have a sharp look on the Russian gray zone activities, which are ongoing every day. So, and that is the main driver that we are changing our whole processes at the moment. So credible deterrence and the fact that time is absolutely critical, that are the guidelines for us. So what we are learning from the German perspective, from the Ukraine war, only technology can win. So technology is not building a capability, so we just have to look on the whole PFI spectrum, really to build a capability at the end of the day, but technology is the baseline for that. So therefore, we are changing our innovation and research and development processes within the whole MOD, because if you look back for the last 30 years, we set up all the processes for efficiency and, to be very open and frank, to postpone decision points based on the fact that we have not enough defense budget to bring all these things in action. Now we have to speed up all these things, and especially we have to come to a point where we come to an incremental approach, building up capabilities. So we cannot wait that we are going to a technological readiness level 7 or higher, so we must bring the equipment much more faster to the warfighters. So then we change the inputs. So not longer generic planning, what I mentioned, so we are looking on the threat, especially on the Russian capabilities. We are looking on the NATO regional plans and our national homeland defense plan. And that are the guidelines for innovation and what we are doing. So, and at the end of the day, we are pushing OPEX. So last year, we had the first campaign with a large underwater vehicle. So to be used especially in the Baltic Sea. And now we try to get this capability much more faster into the force. Having said that, we are building up an innovation cluster with academia, the universities, our Fraunhofer, which is Germany's lead applied research organization, the industry startup, our own Bundeswehr technical centers. But at the end of the day, it's complementary to all the actions we are doing within NATO and with partners, because we do not have the time to reinvent the wheel. And therefore, I think synchronization and unity of effort is one of the most important points in Europe and as well in NATO. So to sum it up, multinational oriented and networked, I think that is one guideline. It's really a complementary approach with our partners. And the aim, what I said at the beginning, is to be ready for credible deterrence. And what my Chief of the Navy every time said is we have to strengthen our readiness for the fight tonight. We have to prepare and speed up for the fight tomorrow and ready for the fight in the future. And that is these 3 pillars where we have to bring in innovation into the business with our partners.
Thank you. Admiral Linden, did they leave you anything?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about what I'm going to add to this one, but I'll do it from a Swedish perspective, and I'll walk from there. And then being lowest in grade, I have to do with the leftovers. But anyways, from a Swedish point of view, you have to look at the background where we come from. Our background is the Baltic Sea, mainly. And that comes from our national defense strategy before becoming NATO's member about a year ago. We work every day in a 5C environment. It's confined, it's confused, it's cluttered, congested, and contested, from the seabed to the space. In order to negate that area and those challenges, from a national point of view, we have to bring cutting-edge technology to bear in our everyday work, both as for ourselves and as a member of NATO, and of course with our partners and neighbors in the Baltics. We have a strong tradition within the maritime industry, and we work on the same philosophy as we mentioned before, and that is a triple helix. Academia, industry, and military. It has to work in collaboration throughout the time. It has to be
unity of effort, but also to a united language in terms of what is the main objective, what are we aiming for, and what is our goal with this. Bring industry to take away their vision from the profit and the deal to come into what is the mission for the nation. And we're doing that. It is also an MDO area, to the multi-domain area. And we need to find ways, being a small country, both on our own, but also with our neighbors, to bring joint fires to see to work. It is brown, it's confined, and it's also Arctic. That's another challenge we have. So we need to look into that as well. We have a well-integrated military-civilian cooperation. It can be better. Let's be honest about that one. And we work on that as well. And we have seen, especially when we see the things happening to our critical and underwater infrastructure, that we need to be better on the legislative part, especially at sea, together with the civilian authorities and together with our neighboring countries as well, because that is not a one-country problem. It's a problem for all of us. And to bolster that, our main objective a year ago was to hit the ground running to become a net provider within that alliance as soon as possible. It is for others to judge if we're there today, but we're doing our best. But we're actually, it was before, to engage in multilateral collaboration in innovation, development, firstly within the EU, but now also within the NATO. So we're picking up the pace. We need to do that to really address the shared challenge we see in the Baltic Sea, and that's also within the alliance beyond the Baltic Sea.
Thank you. So moving in a slightly different direction, as I talked briefly earlier about how piracy continues to be a challenge, whether it seems to be East Africa, West Africa, Straits of Malacca, South China Sea. I mean, you could even say what's happening now in the Red Sea is maybe a different kind of piracy. So what can be done to more effectively combat piracy in maritime domain awareness, international cooperation, working with law enforcement? And where do you see any best practices that are out there that someone who you see is doing something that think you need to adopt? I'm going to start again, sir.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you can say that the classic way of handling piracy or situations like that is, of course, international cooperation. It's a problem that you cannot solve alone. You need to do it via international cooperation. You need to have engaged local actors as well, so that you try to solve the problem as local as you can. You need to do support for law enforcement. Basically, this is to some extent a law enforcement problem, and it's quite important that we involve that as well. And I think sometimes we tend to fall back to what is treatment of symptoms, but we need to look at the root cause as well and try to handle that. And I think maybe in the Bay of Guinea, you have seen, or the Gulf of Guinea, you have seen some of the ways of trying to do it, engaging with the local countries, engaging in capacity building, trying to make those countries able to have sustainable fishing, and making them able to do their own maritime domain awareness and their own law enforcement at sea. I think that is the way to solve the problem, but sometimes we have to handle the problem via international cooperation until we're able to solve the problem. But it's a difficult question, because sometimes when you see it in one area, when you are able to handle it, you see it turn up in another area. So it's really a difficult question.
Sir. Admiral Lieberts?
Yes, piracy as we knew it last decade is not the main concern anymore in my point of view. And that's even before the events in the Red Sea, when we started rerouting shipping to avoid the Red Sea. But it was already on the decline before that. And we already talked about the vital infrastructure. And I think that is the new form of piracy. We see Russian ships, we see Russian affiliated ships, we see Russian shadow fleet posing a threat to our vital infrastructure in the Baltic as well as in the North Sea. And yesterday there was in the news that there's even sensors dropped off the UK coast, probably by Russian actors, but I'm not sure about that. What we do know is that Russia and also China are developing equipment to threat our vital infrastructure. Even China showed us equipment to cut cables. And this form of hybrid warfare requires a whole-of-government approach. And that's the same for piracy, I would say. And not even a whole-of-government approach, but also a whole-of-society approach. Because the companies that operate and build the vital infrastructures, they are responsible to have them robust and redundant by design. And the Coast Guard, for example, is responsible for maritime safety and maritime security if it's not related to state actors. And when it's about state actors, then of course the Navy comes in. And the main challenge, and it's the same for fighting piracy, is the sharing of information. And that's harder than it seems, because commercial parties, they don't like to share their vulnerabilities or commercial data with other parties. And law enforcement agencies, they don't like to share their legal information with other departments, let alone private companies. And the same counts for the Navy. We also like to protect our information position. So how do you create a system where you can share this information? And I think we can learn from how we do it in the Caribbean islands, where there's a joint interagency task force together also with the US, where we can bring in the information and share the information as everybody sees fit, and coordinate, not control, but coordinate actions on the basis who's in the best position to respond. And I think we should develop this system of this joint interagency task force any further. And we have an initiative called the Northern Naval Capability Cooperation that is just about this. It is about developing unmanned systems for the protection of critical underwater infrastructure, but mainly at data processing and getting this picture in a joint interagency task force setting and share the information. And I think that is the way to go. And we started this with the Nordic countries, as we see here. But we're now opening up to EU and NATO countries. And for example, there's a challenge in May this year, when about 20 companies are participating in this evolution, just to see what we can do to protect the coast, the vital infrastructure, just prior to the NATO summit that we are hosting in June. And I can invite everybody to join in. And if you want more information, I can point you to a website. It's called csec.org, and you get all the information you want. Thank you.
Thank you. Brought up an interesting point, I thought, about the infrastructure and having one, a ship flagged in one country, owned by a second country, and crewed by a third country. Is that a state actor, or is that right almost in a U.S. sporting, if you have two safeties, one's the Coast Guard and one's the Navy, it's like they're splitting the middle because it's hard to tell, is it a state actor or is this a commercial problem? So, interesting. Admiral Gertner?
Yeah, coming back to the first question, definitely we are refocusing our Navy and our whole armed forces to collective defense. But nevertheless, we will employ forces in international naval diplomacy and in international crisis management operations. And therefore, we are still looking on piracy operations as well. And if you look on our economic situation, freedom of navigation and protecting the international rule-based order, it's a precondition for us from Germany. And therefore, we are still looking on anti-piracy operations as well. Having said that, from a naval perspective, I think the main problem with combating piracy is that mostly we are fighting just the symptoms instead of the disease. So having said that, mostly piracy is embedded in a local and regional network of organized crime. And in some cases, we must see that piracy is the most important employer for the people living at the shore. So by reducing the problem just to the act of combating piracy in the maritime domain, from our perspective, really will fail to combat piracy in the future as a whole. So therefore, talking about the practicalities, a precondition for us is regional ownership with regard to law enforcement. So I think we have to bring in the regional partners into the game, because piracy is not solely a military task at the end of the day. So we have to bring in the capabilities, because often necessary capabilities of the responsible agency, ministries, or departments in the area are not sufficient enough to cope with the challenge. And I think if we look back into the operations which were ongoing, like Atalanta, I think that worked well with the international community together with the regional partners.
Yeah. Thank you. Admiral Linden?
Last one again. See what I can work with here. But no, I agree. It starts with maritime domain awareness. Any disruption to trade flows on the maritime arena will affect us all. So it becomes a joint problem. Piracy as a phenomenon is a transnational problem, and I think the response to it should be accordingly to the transnational response as well. I think in terms of meeting and having a long-term tangible results, it has to be international cooperation, has to remain the key to where we go. We touched about this before, and then also seeing not only a kinetic response, but also to the development actions, to government support in the area as well. But in every area where the problem occurs, it is a different setting, it's a different operational challenge, so it has to be set accordingly. And we see different lines of approaches. We see the Atlanta approach within the EU, which was a comprehensive approach. We see another approach with the CTF 151 as well. So, but both are successful, but in different approaches. So that's where we need to go. And important to get there and have a swift, stern, and comprehensive to the response and effect. We need to look into joint training, capacity building missions, legal harmonization. So also ones. So that's where we start.
Absolutely. I think you all sort of hinted at the needing to be more than just a whole of government approach, almost a whole of society approach. It reminds me of a course I took where they talked about many problems being like a balloon. If you squeeze it from one side, it pops out a different direction. So in an area where maybe fishing fleets come in and take the livelihood away from fishermen, they look for another, squeeze it one direction, they look for another opportunity, and maybe that's piracy. And if we go in and deal with piracy, they switch to narco trafficking or weapons trafficking or some other issue. If you don't go and weed out the underlying root cause, you haven't really prevented the issue. Again, you're working on the symptoms and not the underlying disease. So appreciate that. Well, Kelson, how does Denmark best leverage its substantial commercial fleet in light of the present-day maritime security challenges?
I would say that to me, it's really a force multiplier, our merchant fleet. I don't think we see it in that way, or we didn't traditionally see it in that way, but I think our merchant fleet is a force multiplier. First of all, if we do it in the right way, we have access to a lot of strategic sea lift, and that is a scarce resource on the world markets, and we have seen when conflicts occur, it's really difficult to get strategic sea lift. We have the merchant fleet. We can do some arrangements and contracts before we see a conflict, so that we have secured access to strategic sea lift. That is definitely one of the points where I think the merchant navy is a force multiplier. Secondly, Denmark is not a very big nation, not a very big kingdom. We don't have a very big navy, but we have a big merchant fleet, and they have a logistic network all over the world. And we don't have that from the Navy perspective. But we can make use of the merchant navy's logistic network, and we have done that before. And that is definitely a force multiplier as well, because we're able to get logistic support in areas where we don't operate every day, and in areas where we don't have allies operating. So I think that'll be my point of view, the two main points is strategic sea lift and logistic network around the world.
Absolutely. And the ability, I think, to repurpose from commercial to military and back again can't be understated when, you know, the need may be there to ramp up quickly.
Absolutely, and it's expensive to have those assets and not use them every day. But if you can put them into use in a commercial way and then call upon them when they're needed for military purposes, I think that's very cost effective.
Great. Admiral Linden, we'll let you go in the middle this time so you don't have to pick up the scratch.
Thank you.
With Sweden a year into the NATO alliance, you know, how have things changed and how has this affected your situation? Where do you see it going from here?
Well, I listened to Admiral Kilby this morning, and he did it 3 words, and I wrote it down and I thought about it, and he said, mindset, skill set, tool set. And I think that in terms of Sweden, we have the tool set and skill set in terms of where we operate today and the burden within our part in NATO to share, but we have to change our mindset. And the mindset goes from having a defensive posture, national navy, with the focus of deterring, not deterring, but actually to the denying sea control from our adversary, to going from sea denial to sea control, and doing that. We also see we really need to first and foremost change our mindset, but also in the end, and I'm trying to get the budgetary people to listen to me, but there's always a challenge. We need to change our tool set as well. And so what happened throughout this year of finding our role within NATO and being, as I touched on before, a net contributor and within NATO, we see a steep, I mean really steep increase in the budgetary and defense spending in Sweden. We had a defense budget going from 1.8 to 2.5 and hitting 2.5 within 2026 and going to 2.8 in 2028. And now we have a new one, it's 3 weeks old. It goes from 2.8 to 3.5 within a 10-year period. And we will do that into to 2035, and that's a really steep increase. And all of us who are in procurement sees the challenge of spending the money wisely and getting the most bang for the buck doing that. But I've been in panels before, and I used the word being alliance illiterates, and I think to some degree we're still there, but the mindset is shifting, both within the society, but also especially within the Navy. I do, and now I speak from the naval point of view. I think the Navy had the shortest way to go to become a member, or actually being within NATO, because we always been in a lot of those exercises. But we'll be getting there step by step. But I still hope and I perceive ourselves as a net contributor from day one still. But we're increasing that contribution on an everyday basis.
Yeah, it can be really challenging to deal with. It's a great business to be in, to deal with increased defense budget, but knowing that it takes 2 to 4 years usually to see flash to bang to actual capabilities, which are sometimes longer than a government wants to wait to see results, is challenging, right? And as we saw prior to the Ukraine war, in a lot of cases we were not procuring sufficient weapons, and then all of a sudden the next day, literally, we wanted to max out production, and industry just couldn't react that quickly.
Now, we saw a shift in the procurement dynamics that especially started the war, but especially now. In the start of the war, all of us wanted to ramp up our production as well as to spend more money and ramp up our capabilities, which meant when you bought something on the market, you bought a product and a queue slip. Whatever you buy today, you're last in line. And going from major ship procurement, which usually takes somewhere, depending on how long the process is, from 10 to 15 years, being that a submarine or a surface ship. But it's not what politicians always seem to be well-spent money, because that is very, very far ahead. And I totally agree with that. But you have to understand the national need, both in terms of our own national defense, but also within our role as a NATO member, and add up and get those capabilities on the board, and especially for my CNO to have operational availability, but also the operational relevance to what we buy, and time, cost, and quality. That's three things that seldom goes together.
Absolutely. Admiral Liebriggs, what lessons learned are you taking away from the Ukraine conflict and using to shape your force into the future?
I think it's a lot we can learn from the conflicts both in Ukraine and in the Red Sea, for example. And I think we learned two lessons, apart from how incredibly effective drones can be in sea denial. But if we've learned two things, I would say it's the expenditure of weapon systems and the need to develop weapon systems in the short term. If you look at Ukraine, weapon systems can be outdated in a period like 6 weeks. Think about that. That is really, really fast. So we want to have a new approach to building our fleet. And one of the things I wanted to highlight here is a thing we called the multi-role support ships. And I think it's very similar to the hybrid fleet concept Admiral Kilby mentioned this morning. I heard for the first time. But the concept is pretty simple. Buy a readily available ship and use it to maximum extent in the short term. For example, we bought a system. We started the procurement in late 2024. We awarded the contract in February. And prior to the NATO summit in June, there will be a ship in the North Sea providing ISR on the North Sea area before the NATO summit with a civilian crew augmented by very limited military personnel. And we're taking this concept further because by the end of this year, we want to have military versions of the same ship that are able to operate in conjunction together with our air defense destroyers. So you can put containerized air defense missiles on a ship like this, augmenting the fighting power. You can also put electronic warfare systems on a ship like this. And this way, filling in a shortfall we have had for a long time. And this is a way to speed up development. And we haven't got a clue yet how we are going to integrate this vessel that is low manned, and we're aiming to be unmanned in the very near future. But how are we going to integrate it with this air defense destroyer? I don't know yet. But what we do know is that we have the skills and the capability to do so. But I want to push it for two reasons. I want to have the capacity in my Navy in the short term. And I want to get my Navy in a position where we are more flexible and adaptive to new threats. And I think this is the way to go for the Navy in the short term.
I think we're doing a lot of the same on our side, right? Like sometimes you develop a technology that you see a gap for and you develop it straight away. And other times you have to develop the technology and then figure out how it fits into the broader puzzle.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this morning a gentleman said the navies are generally very risk averse if it's about procurement of equipment. But you can't expect to have all the risks covered if you want to have a rapid development of equipment.
Right. Admiral Gertner, what do you think are the biggest strategic challenges for the German Navy in the near term?
Yeah, first of all, I think near future is, from a German perspective, maybe the answer in itself. So when you look how our approach normally is, so we preparing strategically and theoretically to fight the battles in 10 or 20 years. So that's working well. But at the moment, we have to be ready to fight now. And I think that's a big challenge for our organization. But to go to a broader context, I think the good thing and the good message is that the challenge and really arrived in our society, so that we have to do something. So the good phrase Zeitenwende from our Chancellor, so it's not just a political phrase. I think it's really now in the public eye. So the permanent threat and the ongoing gray zone activities, morely linked to Russia and the Baltic Sea, that is really now in presence in the whole society. And therefore, we are really working on the political framework to bring in more money into the system. So this year, for the first time, we touched the 2% goal, but at the end of the day, we can expect to get much, much more money. And to be honest, from our perspective, the strategic challenge is not to get the money at the moment, but to get the equipment. Because if you see what happened for the last 30 years in our industrial base, so we just were decreasing all the capabilities, and at the moment, the industry is absolutely not able to build the systems in time. So therefore, we have to look carefully and discuss with the industry what they really can deliver in time. Second part, I think that's the hybrid Navy approach, which we discussed earlier, and that's the challenge for us as well. So I think we cannot make the same mistake like we did a couple of times, so that we just say we get rid of all the manned systems and unmanned is the new holy capability for us. No. The question is to find the right balance between manned and unmanned system and build up really effective manned-unmanned teaming of systems in the future. So we started with the long-lasting projects, that is on the run, but on the other hand, we have to find ways in our processes and especially in the procurement law and as well in our budget law to bring in new systems much more faster and not built for eternity for 30 years. So we have to buy stuff for, let's say, 5 or 3 years, or maybe only for 3 years, get rid, bring in new technology, make the teaming with the existing long-lasting systems. So, and now I think from overall, we are on a good path. So we have the new ASW frigates under contract. We have our new intelligence gathering ships under contract. We have the new oilers under contract. So we got the P-8 new helicopters, so that's working well. So we are looking for the F-127 because I think the integrated air missile defense frigate, that is one of the key projects. So there was a long discussion within the Navy and with the politicians in Berlin, and we made the decision to go for a US system. So, and we will keep the path because I think if we look for operational effectiveness, that's from our perspective the only way to do that. And overall, I think we will keep on the transatlantic link. So the US Navy is our most important partner, but at the end of the day, we are ready to take over more responsibility. And therefore, I think CTF Baltic is really a story of success, but not the story of success of the German Navy. I think it's a story of success of all these 13 countries which are involved into the CTF Baltic and which are taking over regional responsibility for the Baltic. And if you look on the capabilities the Russians have, if you look what is in the Oblast Kaliningrad, I think that there we have to do a common approach, and there we are on a really good path.
You made me think of a new question. So, and we've overperformed on time, so maybe we have time for each of you. If you had to, I did a little talking about future technologies that are out there. If you could pick one future technology that you think is the most important for your service, what is it, and why do you think it's the most important? Admiral Linden, you want to start?
I could actually pick out a specific piece, but that comes from me being a submariner by trade before that. But that would be underwater communications with the large bandwidth, so you can really take advantage of real-time information and intelligence exchange from the submarines in the Baltics. That is very specific, I know that, and that comes from my own heritage. And then I think as well and I think when we talk about technology, and now I'm burning time here, I'm sorry about that, but what we learned from Ukraine is two things. Technology drives tactics, not the other way around. That's where we're at today. And mass matters. And looking into those two things, we have to build Sweden today. We don't have the manpower to build mass in that way. So we need to be building mass by effects. Building mass by effects spells unmanned today. So unmanned in any capacity to build that mass in order to deliver as much problems and complex military situations from our adversaries as possible within every given time. That must be the main objective.
Admiral Liebriggs, you want to take a crack?
Yes, I would, but I wouldn't focus only on technology. I would say I could pretty much project on the wall here the same priorities as Admiral Kilby said this morning. There's a number of challenges we have, and one of them is to get our fleet more ready than they used to be. That's one of them, and we've got it in our own hands because we own our own shipyard. But how do you reduce maintenance cycles and get the ships ready to go to sea within shorter time frames? But there's a number of challenges related to this, and I think personnel is one of the most important one. Like the US, we also have a problem in retaining personnel and recruitment of personnel, and that is picking up, also because of the main security challenge we have in Europe right now. I think a lot of people are, and also younger people, are interested in joining the armed forces because of the situation that is out there, and I think that's hopeful to me and encouraging. Personnel is one of the bigger challenges. Looking at technology, maybe not technology, but I think what we need very rapidly is more ammunition. Ammunition, the production of ammunition, I think it's one of our top priorities. And I think Admiral Kertner also talked about this. How do you scale up the production capacity worldwide and also in Europe? And maybe more focusing on technology, I think one of the main topics that we need to improve is the secure information handling. How do we really talk to each other in a secure manner? Very much like the second panel of today about how do we use the cloud, for example, in information exchange with other partners. And I think we cannot underestimate the role that NATO is playing also in this respect. NATO is not just about operations, but we cannot underestimate the role, the importance of standardization of procedures, so that we understand each other, but also standardization in equipment, so that it doesn't really matter what kind of manufacturer is building your radio equipment, but as long as they use the same standards, they can talk to each other. And I think that is very important, and we need to use the NATO standards also in the future as much as we did in the past, but keeping up the pace, and the pace is picking up faster and faster, and also NATO needs to pick up the pace.
So you're reminding me of two things, the old saying that quantity has its own quality.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then a little bit of parallel there with Admiral Linden's on the secure communication, right? In a distributed battlefield, having the right information from the right sensor to the right shooter to complete a kill chain. And if the link between them is that secure communications, whether it's underwater, acoustic communications, or otherwise. So.
Exactly.
Admiral Kelson?
If I have to pick one technology, I would say AI or machine learning. You touched upon the kill chain, and I think we have so much data available out there. We don't, of course, we can always do with new sensors, but we have so much information available, but it's really difficult for us to sort it, to handle it, to fuse it. And I think AI is very, very important in being able to fuse and handle the data that we have out there. AI is important in order to connect the full kill chain, and AI is as well very important in order to handle hypersonic threats and hypersonic targets because we can't do that manually. The targets are too fast, and if we want to be effective in that area, we need AI or machine learning as well. So I would say AI, machine learning.
Thanks. Admiral Gertner?
More or less everything said. So first of all, I want to underline from my perspective, I think the biggest challenge which we are facing is the problem of personnel and of recruiting. And therefore, we have to use technology really to bring the effects with less personnel. So, and that is, from my perspective, the biggest role of technology we see at the moment. So all the technologies, quantum technology, AI, fine, but from my perspective, we have to look especially into the electromagnetic spectrum, what's ongoing there, and how we really can assure the access to the spectrum from our perspective, for our operations, and especially if you see the opponent capabilities and what's ongoing in the Ukraine at the moment. I think there we really have to rethink how we are fighting the war and how we got superiority in the electromagnetic spectrum, and what technologies can assist that approach.
So I think you cheated. That was 2, right? People and EW spectrum. That's okay. We'll take that. Yeah, they often say it's all about the people, and as you each talked about unmanned, I think one of the things we found on our journey was unmanned doesn't mean unmanned. And in fact, most of the time, as we shifted from a asset with people in it to one without, it allowed that ability to operate longer, which really meant you needed more people to maintain and sustain and operate, which is counterintuitive, which makes your recruiting and retention challenges even harder because you now need more people. And in some ways, you lose the excitement of getting to fly the really cool thing, at least on airplanes. And yeah, EW spectrum is obviously super important, whether it's communication, jamming, or other effects. So thank you. So I'd like to say, gentlemen, appreciate you taking part in our panel this year. I think it was good. Hopefully it was good for you guys too. And ladies and gentlemen, if we could offer a round of applause and thank our panelists for joining us.